The history of fire magic. In the beginning, there was the Dragon Titan, an immortal being capable of burning an entire world or rekindling a soul's lost spark. From the embers left in its wake, there came the race of dragons, who harnessed the power of fire to rule the lands. As fire magic passed to younger races, dragons were pushed out of the fledgling worlds, seeking refuge neath the sleeping form of their ancestor. Their drake offspring formed alliances with roving human clans to rebel against their parents, ultimately establishing the Empire of Dragonspyre. The history of ice magic. In the first world, the children of Lady Nightstar, the grandmother Raven, battled constantly. Titans they were, embodiments of ice, fire, and storm. Their conflict shook the world, but by the time of the spiral, only their offspring remained. Giants were the descendants of the Ice Titan, who used his power to create frost castles from frozen clouds. Like their ancestor, they battled the dragons on the ground until the wars decimated both races. The giants retreated to the world now known as Grizzleheim, where the few who still remain rule the frigid realm of Wintertusk. The history of storm magic. The ancient Tritons were creatures of the sea and heirs to the power of the Storm Titan. It is thought that they used their command of lightning to create technological wonders, but if true, their inventions were lost to uncertain tides. The Tritons isolated themselves from their dragon and giant contemporaries, but were often blamed for cataclysms on the land or in the skies. Eventually, they retreated to hidden oceans, seldom ever seen again, though some suspect there is a world of Tritons waiting to be found. The history of life magic. Life magic was said to have been discovered by the earliest inhabitants of the Ravenwood, guided by none other than Grandfather Tree himself. He instructed his early disciples to plant trees and tend to a grove to learn the complex interactions of all living things. As these early Thurgists advanced in their studies, so too did their gardens improve, eventually sprouting these sentient spell trees. Not just of life magic, but of all the schools. Each tree embodied a new form of magic, a new aspect of existence. It was through their growth, study, and teaching that magical law was tested, explored, and codified. The history of myth magic. In its most rarefied form, myth magic is of the mind, the energy of thought and imagination. But in its current application, the myth school is relatively young, relying as it does on fables and legends that needed first to be written. Conjugation was discovered by a bard named Jack Stanley Kane, who sang a troll song so well the troll came to life and attacked the audience. The performance received mixed reviews, but the monster summoning was embraced by everyone from tyrants to toddlers and remains in practice today. The history of death magic. The original practitioners of death magic were shunned by their societies, written off and punished as plague carriers and spirit thieves. And it's true that many of ill intent found a school with such spooky spells thematically amendable. The worst such group was the cult of the Corrosive Chorus, a sect from ancient Azteca who loathed the Song of Creation and sought to unwrite it. They traveled across nascent skyways, summoning banshees and spectral skulls to scream a discordant melody that could unmake worlds. Some believe Bartleby himself intervened to stop them, cursing the death cult with eternal life, sealed forever in a soundproof prison. The history of balance magic. Traditional theory holds that there are two broad categories of magic: elemental, fire, ice, and storm, and spiritual, life, death, and myth. Legends of astral magic from ancient Celestia often complicated those old definitions, but there is yet to be physical evidence of the practice. It was ultimately the discovery of balance magic on Krokotopia that upended the previous paradigms and introduced a composite sorcery that blended the power of elemental schools while also being able to enhance or debilitate spiritual powers. Today, balance is considered one of the core 7 schools of magic, but many institutions have yet to fully incorporate it into curricula. Ancient Marleybone. Marleybone was once a land filled with ancient dog tribes who warred with each other constantly. The tribes battled each other with tooth and bone until one rose up to unite them. Bormut, a mighty hunter, won over all the other clans by defeating them in a mighty battle. Because of this great loss of life, it was sworn that all dogs should only strive for peace. Since then, the tribes began to pursue the betterment of all dogs through the arts and sciences. Theories of Marleybone. It is believed that when the world was larger than it is now, the Marleybone that we know of today was once connected to other lands. Other worlds, such as Wizard City, Krakatopia, and Grizzleheim, are thought to have once been part of the same huge land that was once joined together. It is thought that a galactic catastrophe caused the land to split apart. Primitives believe that the world was part of a great tree that broke apart after a great war. But most scholars today believe this to be rubbish. Most scientists believe the ancient land was struck by a large bone flying through space. This volume is entitled Rebirth of Marleybone. As memory of the despised Marleybone kings faded, interest in ancient Marleybone grew. We call this era the Rebirth. Unlike before, this exciting period began not with kings, but with poets and scientists, including greats like Lady Chelsea and Sir Lawrence Hyde. Building on ancient knowledge, the inventors developed the first machines at this time, such as the printing press, which made this book possible. This volume is entitled The Golden Age. The Rebirth had an impact on more than just science. The kingdom itself would change, starting with Queen Ellen. Matters turned sour when a popular printer ended up in prison because he spoke out against the government. A revolt seemed likely. However, Queen Ellen released him and formed a parliament. Thus, Queen Ellen's reign is remembered as the Golden Age. This volume is entitled The Spiral. While many great scientific discoveries occurred after the Golden Age, it would be a forgotten area of research that would change Marleybone forever. Harold Digmore studied ancient myths for Parliament. One evening, he spoke a line of ancient text and suddenly found himself in Wizard City. The discovery of the spiral and of power has inspired new scientific inventions, as well as the exploration of other worlds and our ancient past. This volume is entitled Modern Marleybone. Advances in science and magic have freed many Marleybonians from hard jobs like farming. Many now enjoy long lives and leisure. These advances have also allowed some to grow more powerful than others. These power shifts could unbalance Marleybone's stability if we allow technology to get away from us. Hopefully, brave souls will set things right. Marleybone will continue to act as a beacon of knowledge and enlightenment for many worlds, as long as peace reigns at home. This volume is entitled Marleybone Civil War. Tension between the cats and dogs of Marleybone peaked when Cat General Robert E. Leary waged war on all of the dogs of Marleybone. The dogs fought back to keep Marleybone from falling into chaos. Dog General Sherman M. Bones defeated the revolting cats and preserved the political stability. This book begins, according to legend, dragons once lived on MooShu. The tale begins with Emperor Ping, who formed the first empire using the power of a dragon. Since that time, the MooShu emperors have wielded dragon magic and have called themselves descendants of the dragon. There came a time when even the power of dragons was not enough, begins this volume. Neighboring clan leaders mastered magic of their own. They began fighting each other, and the power of the emperor weakened. 3 clans controlled MooShu during this period, and although they are no longer as powerful as they once were, to this day they continue to influence the destiny of MooShu. This book starts with, years of infighting left the clans out of control. Emperor MooShu seized the power that was rightfully his by rallying the people against the corrupt clan leaders. Because Emperor MooShu was the first emperor to unite the entire country, people have called it MooShu ever since. Centuries of peace led to one of the greatest periods in MooShu history, begins this volume. During Emperor Suong's rule, the people of MooShu began developing magic not just for officials, but for commoners as well. The country thrived with new ideas and art. MooShu rediscovered the spiral and welcomed trade from other worlds. Treaties between neighboring worlds fostered a spirit of friendship and cooperation. The treaties with the foreigners angered some warlords, starts this book. 2 small clans, the Kaidan and the Manju, mastered magic through the spiral. They seized control and imprisoned the emperor in the Jade Palace. Their rule was hard on the people of MooShu. Thanks to the work of pious monks, the teachings of the Buddha offered comfort and spread amongst the people of MooShu. A strange alliance led to the end of the Kaidan and Manju rule, this book begins. The monks who followed Buddha spoke out. The samurai, servants of the great 3 clans, rose up to free the emperor. The emperor took the name of one of these brave samurai, Heiji. He restored the philosophy of Kyun-Fuzi to the country, and he opened the spiral only to those most worthy. Ever since, MooShu emperors have ruled a peaceful land with the help of the other clans, samurai, and the Buddha's monks, who rely on swords and prayers rather than spiral magic. you find another volume which reads, "With newfound peace came a new philosophy to govern MooShu. To prevent the clans from fighting again, officials had to study an ever-growing library of books and scrolls. Emperors only appointed officials based on hard work and merit. This honor code, developed by the great philosopher Kyun Fuzi, spread throughout MooShu. The people still follow its principles today, and honor the emperor above all else." This tome is titled Ancient of Days, the Founding of Dragonspyre. Here were dragons. Dragonspyre was a haven from its earliest days to the Scaled Ones. In those days, men and dragon were dire enemies, and the folks who lived here did so in constant fear. This tome is titled The Age of the Kingdom of Dragonspyre. When the dragons ruled the skies and struck fear into the hearts of men, the wise and powerful King Mene met in secret with the Queen of the Drakes, Gavarena. Gavarena and Mene joined together. The forces of men and drakes banded together and overcame the dragons, thus ushered in the Age of the Kingdom of Dragonspyre. This tome is titled The Dragons and the Century War. The Kingdom of Dragonspyre grew throughout the spiral, as drakes provided protection for the realms both big and small. King Jungin died without an heir, an occurrence that sparked a war for the throne that lasted for 100 years. At the end, the war became known as the Century War. This tome is titled The Aftermath of the Century War. The Century of War came to an abrupt end when Kalgor the Magnificent claimed the throne of Dragonspyre and forced a peace upon the land. With a new era of peace, the battle wizards of Dragonspyre turned to the creation of knowledge crystals. This heralded a period of many great advances in culture, science, and learning. This tome is titled The Founding of Dragonspyre Academy. All the knowledge of the kingdom was reserved for royalty, but this would not remain the case. When Rydal the Conqueror inadvertently unleashed a magical plague upon his duchy, Duke Sebastian fought with the lords of Dragonspyre for knowledge for the cure. His bravery prompted the foundation of Dragonspyre Academy, a school for children throughout the kingdom. All who qualified were welcome within Dragonspyre Academy. This tome is titled The Greatest Wizards and Warriors of Dragonspyre. As the power of the king waned, the warriors and wizards of the council began to struggle over power, seeking advantage over their fellow men. A group of warriors sought control over all the spells used by wizards throughout the kingdom. The matter was called before the council. One defenseless wizard bested a warrior in open battle, ending the matter. Since that day, wizards have controlled all spells on Dragonspyre. This tome is titled The Great Council of Wizards, Warriors, and Kings. As more wizards and warriors graduated from the academy, their political power grew in Dragonspyre. One of their number, Alderud, used his knowledge to unseat the king. His rule was without mercy, and he was despised by his subjects. The wizards and warriors of Dragonspyre united against Alderud and threw him down from his place of power. From that day forth, Dragonspyre was ruled jointly by the Council of Wizards, Warriors, and King. The Story of Earl. From the Darkening Woods came the sage King Rhaegar, wealthy in lore and runecraft. The young warrior Earl learned the runes from Rhaegar, the truth they told. Rhaegar's counsel served Earl wise. In times to come, Earl was named his son and his king. Thane and Thrall were Earl's two brothers. Master and servant were their roles. The Story of Connor. Connor the Young was rune-wise beyond his years. Many secrets he knew of their use. Bygone runes and runes of the future. Their knowledge was Connor's to master. Runes to blunt swords or to speak to birds, to quench burning brands or to quell crashing waves. Connor wrestled in rune lore with the rune sage Rhaegar, waxed in wisdom, and won the wager. Wealthy in victory's grace, Connor took the name Rhaegar and closed the ring himself. The Tale of the Runes. Runes you will find letters of skill and power, letters that are great, letters that are strong, letters a mighty wizard first carved. He learned the letters of fates. Runes set forth across the world, wise counsel for all to seek. A test of the runes. Do you know how to carve the runes? Do you know how to read them? Do you know how to paint the runes? Do you know how to prove them? Do you know how to cast the runes? Do you know how to find them? All these things you must know to be called Rune Master. The power of the runes. Runes can ward against sorrows. They can bind wounds suffered. Runes can break chains. They can stop arrows in flight. Runes can turn a curse against the speaker. They can calm the angriest of hearts. Runes can give strength to allies. They can cause the dead to speak. All these things runes can do. There is more that is unsaid. The story of the Grendels. First mother of the Grendels sought safety for her child. To all things she sought an oath against harm. To soothe a worried mother, all oaths but one were sworn. It was not the Spider Queen's nature to keep a promise. To live untested and unthreatened is to live without humility. Monstrous and evil grew the Grendelkin. Old oaths forgotten are still potent wards against harm. The first among the Grendels hold little in fear. A nuisance are the youngest of that wretched kind. A calamity are the eldest and the strongest. Tooth, Claw, and Wing. 3 tribes inherited this land. Bear, Wolf, and Raven call it home. Mighty warriors and makers of fine things. Honor and strength are the bear's way. Swift hunters and night runners. Speed and cunning are the wolf's way. Crafty sages and honeyed speakers. Magic and counsel are the raven's way. Together they must dwell here. Peace must govern them all, always. In days agone, void was all. Storm, ice, and fire made war. The one world was torn apart. Tree and raven stopped the war. They sang the song of sleep and put the Titans to rest. Ice went to sleep 'neath Grizzleheim. They called him Ymir in early days. Father of frost, bringer of winter. Woe be the days the Ice Titan rises. Winter will come and never go. Ice will engulf the worlds. Grandmother Raven watches Grizzleheim, perched upon the world tree, guarding against the day Ymir awakes. 4 are Ymir's sons. Bound they are to fight for him. Trust not the sons of ice. Volume 1. Founding. After his unceremonious dismissal from the Ravenwood School of Magic, Sir Bainbridge Pigswick devised a plan. He would create a school of his own, where his unorthodox and less common philosophy of magic would be taught. Pigswick squandered his inheritance and purchased a deserted, vine-covered city on the world of Wysteria. Where others saw a series of wrecked, vine-choked buildings, Pigswick saw a magnificent school of magical arts. Volume 2. Early Days. Pigswick staffed his academy with instructors drawn from across the spiral, hired for their willingness to relocate. Rather than the dusty, tried-and-true methods of teaching magic, Pigswick sought new and less traditional approaches. Pigswick's students were among the finest of those willing and able to afford the academy's exceptionally high tuition. With lenient entry requirements, Pigswick is the primary school for students lacking obvious magic ability. Volume 3. Education. The Pigswick method of magic instruction teaches that students should be exposed only to theoretical discussions. Actual magic and spellcasting is discouraged as vulgar and easy. The true path to magic is a restful attitude. For this reason, Pigswick students are given no homework, no studies, and spend most of their time taking naps. Well-rested students are eventually able to figure it out when it comes to the use of magic. Unfortunately, few Pigswick students ever become real wizards, and most enter other trades. Volume 4. Tournament. To spread the word of Pigswick's educational innovations, Headmaster Pigswick started a magical tournament. Students representing all of the different schools of magic from across the spiral were invited to compete. The Spiral Cup was selected as the grand prize, a fitting symbol of magic supremacy and skill.
Though in the past,
It has been won by Ravenwood and MooShu schools. For many years, the cup has been claimed by Pigswick. Coincidentally, the years Pigswick won the Spiral Cup were also years which no other schools appeared to compete. The chariot races across the sky, a sign of travel and victory in battle. Luminaries, or leaders, ride in chariots, so it is a sign of nobility and favor. The crab is the many-legged buffoon, the jester of the sea. It is the sign of humor and of foolish pride. The crab takes credit for more than he has achieved. The fountain quenches thirst and washes away the dirt of the road. It is the sign of purity and of sustenance, and of ritual and the city. The galleon is both a vessel of war and trade, exploration, and the ocean horizon. It is a sign of the journey and of the return. It guides those away from their homes and sees them safe to port. The hound is a loyal friend and the defender of the hearth. It is a sign of the follower and of groups, of loyalty and a measure of how the wild may be tamed. The kraken lurks within the depths of the ocean, tendrils bringing doom and woe to all. It is the sign of evil and death at sea, of dark possibility and the wild unknown of the deep. The loom weaves cloth for robes to wear, and sail to set to the wind. It is the sign of civilization, of manufacture, and beauty in craftsmanship. The messenger carries words for luminary and serf alike, an envoy of the truth. It is a sign of conciliation and of friendship, a herald of negotiation and of proclamation. The phoenix is the flame that cannot die, a beacon of extinction and of fiery renewal. It is the sign of hope in the darkness, vigor where fatigue is set in. It is a rallying sign. The serpent is a clever one, a narrow trickster with eyes that beguile. It is the sign of the hidden treat, of deceit and the secret trespasser. It is not trusted. The stag is the sign of the hunter's prey, which must be pursued. It represents the noble wild, that which is natural and untamed. The warden is the watcher, the sentinel serving without thought of self. It is the sign of the soldier who defends, or the curator who collects and preserves. In the Age of Wonder, this land was green and good. All people worked together, and every day was bright with promise. Then the shadows came, friendly words were forgotten, and faces looked ugly in the dark. The king of old called to the sun for help, and the warriors of light came from across the spiral. The Council of Light fought the shadow spiders, battling every step of the way to the doors of the spider temple. They broke the tower, pulled the spider queen's fangs, and buried the heart of darkness for all time. These two volumes are entitled House of Secrets and House of Mystery. There are two houses in Darkmoor where secrets breed and mysteries bloom. These are the way stations on the frontiers of nightmare. One is home to the unknown, the other to the unknowable. Their rooms are endless, their halls infinite, and their masters and mistresses ever-changing. This book is titled The Werewolves of Marleybone. The opening reads, I saw a werewolf with a MooShu menu in his hand, walking through Regent Square in the rain. He was looking for the place called Chung Kun Maxim, gonna get a big dish of beef chow mein. This slim tone is called Maiden in the Rue Morgue. It begins. We existed within ourselves alone. There was none to hear the strange voice that spoke in many tongues, none to hear its savage cries, and none to witness the deaths of Madame Marie Roget and her daughter, Camille, trapped in a locked room in the Rue Morgue. This fat book is labeled Clem the Kitten Slayer. It opens as follows. Into every generation a slayer is born, one hairless, wrinkled fiend in all the world, a chosen one. He, or she, for sometimes it is a she, though not as often because of the hairless and wrinkled aspects, will have great strength and skill. And he, or she, alone, but with some incredibly sharp weapons, will fight the cats, kittens, and forces of darkness. To stop the spread of their catty cuteness and the swell of their number, he, or again she, is the slayer.